None of the panel members were persuaded that respondent truly understands the magnitude and impact of her misconduct.
Wiping his face.
You just sort of smiled a little bit. Why did you smile when I asked you about Mr. Cohen breaking into tears?
Imagine having a boss so toxic that you and everyone else quit to protect your health and sanity. In 3 years at the helm, Judge Tracy Flood drove away 19 of her staffers, including a 22-year veteran probation officer who was twice voted Officer of the Year. I guess that's a thing. You'll hear from him and 3 other witnesses about how she piled on the aggression and tracked their movements. You'll hear from the city attorney, who said his office has cut the number of prosecutions by a factor of 4 because Flood inherited a well-oiled machine and turned it into a cluster. And you'll hear from an evasive Judge Flood, who can't bring herself to admit she's a dictatorial prick. Let's roll, nerds.
She's been on tape. She's been on audio recorded tape for every single second that she's on the bench. Thousands and thousands of hours of interactions with staff, attorneys, probation officers, defendants, and other court participants. Judge Flood is delightful, funny, self-deprecating, smart, and dedicated. These individuals, we'll show you, didn't want to work as hard. They didn't like the change from a judge that had been there for 24 years to a new judge who's a Black woman who's very accomplished. It was about change, it was about insubordination, and it was about personalities, and it's about bias. And yes, she knows there's times when she's not been exactly perfect. But this system doesn't require perfection. It just requires justice.
Was part of your excitement, did it have to do with getting to work with a judge of color?
It was, yes. I was downstairs in the clerk's office, and Was
part of your excitement, did it have to do with getting to work with a judge of color?
It was, yes. I was downstairs in the clerk's office, and I was standing in the doorway of my office, and Ms. Kindler was showing her something, and Judge Flood came down the stairs and in the doorway of the clerk's office screamed in the direction of Ms. Kindler and Ms. Dodge and said, "Will someone please let me in the Zoom room? I have been waiting for 10 minutes. I couldn't move."
What was your observation of Ms. Dodge, of Amber's demeanor when she said these things?
She was frightened. She was scared. She was very panicky and very apologetic to the judge.
Was this the first time you had seen Judge Flood behave in this manner?
Yes, it was.
In your experience working in courts, had you ever seen a judge behave in this manner towards court staff?
No.
And from your demeanor, just speaking, you seem upset. Are you upset in recalling this incident?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Why is it upsetting for you to recall the incident?
Objection. Relevance. Overruled.
I've never, in my 30 plus years of working in the judicial system, ever experienced anything like that.
And once the episode was over, what did the judge do?
And just looked at me. Very upset.
Did she stay? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish.
She just stared at me and then turned around and walked away.
Could you tell whether she went back upstairs in the direction of the courtroom?
I heard her go upstairs. She was stomping upstairs.
Did you see what Amber did after the judge went back upstairs?
Amber was crying. Amber was upset.
Did you notice any changes in the judge's behavior in the days following that incident?
I did.
What did you notice?
She was being very nice to us. She was being very nice to me and Amber.
And was there anything particular she did that you interpreted as being nice?
She brought some treats or something.
Did she ever apologize to you for that incident?
No.
What was the judge's reaction to this?
She said it wasn't what she had asked for. She was very short with him. Judge Flood asked Mr. Knowles why he had not had pro tem Armstrong fill out judgment and sentence on a few cases. Brian started to get up and she snapped at him and said, "Sit down."
Was there anything, could you see Brian's demeanor when he started to get up?
I could.
Did he seem angry? Did he seem like he was going to storm out?
No, he was going to go try and.
Objection, personal knowledge.
Did you have an understanding of, based on your observation of Mr. Knowles, of what you thought he intended to do?
Yes.
Did he seem angry?
No.
And so that you said the judge snapped at him, and did she say anything to him?
Yes.
What did she say to him?
After she told him to sit down, she started to yell at him as to why he had not loaded or done the JNS and why he hadn't filled that out. He tried to explain, and she cut him off, and then she started to scream at him. As it was his job to make sure that those orders needed to be done. And she was screaming at him while he was sitting there. He just sat there. He just was just looking directly at her. He wouldn't look away. He seemed very nervous.
And how did the exchange end between the judge and Mr. Knowles?
She told him to go take care of the judgment and sentence and work with Pro Tem Armstrong. And then he opened the door and exited my office.
Did the judge do anything then?
She looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" And then I said, "No, I'm not." And she walked out of my office. And then about 20 or so seconds later, she turned back around and came back in my office. And she said, "Well, that was a teaching moment." And I said, "That was not a teaching moment."
Objection, hearsay. Overruled.
What was your demeanor at the time? You were tearing up while you were saying this. Were you also?
I was really upset. I was very upset. I was shaking. I told her, I said, "That is not a teaching moment. It was not a teaching moment at all." I said, "You can't speak to people like that."
Hearsay. Objection, hearsay. I'm overruling the objection.
What did the judge do when you said that to her?
He said, "I'm leaving." I said, "I'm leaving. You can't talk. I'm leaving for vacation. You can't talk to people like that."
Did the conversation continue after you responded to the judge?
Yes.
What was the judge's response to you?
She said, "No, you canceled the hearing." I said, "No." I said, "Judge, at your direction." And then there was a long pause.
What happened after the long pause?
I then said, is there something wrong?" She said the prosecutor was making a fuss about it.
Jennifer, was your working relationship with Judge Flood a significant factor in your decision to resign?
Yes.
Was your experience with the judge's treatment of you as court administrator, was it similar to the way you had been treated as court administrator by previous judges?
No.
Did you resign in part because you felt Judge Flood was micromanaging you in your role as court administrator?
Yes.
Did the judge's demeanor towards you factor into your decision to leave your job?
Yes.
Did what you observed of the judge's treatment of other staff figure into your decision to leave your job?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
And the incident that you're thinking of, where did it happen in the courthouse?
It happened in the front office. Well, I recall that I arrived there, it was just before lunchtime. Amber was working with somebody at the front counter, as well as trying to prepare the jail calendar for the upcoming hearings that were taking place that afternoon. And then she also had somebody on the phone. I did see Judge Flood as we were trying to finish up things, and I was still, like I said, Amber was new. I was still trying to train her on how to do something. Judge Flood approached or came to the back of the clerk's office and with her voice raised asked how come nobody was handling the Zoom call. And Amber was responding. She said, Judge, I didn't know you had one. She says, I've been calling. No one's been answering the phone.
You could hear her all the way across the room from the back?
Yes, I was at the front counter with Amber, and the judge was at the back door of the clerk's office.
What did you want to convey to Judge Flood? What was your intent in what did you want to convey to her during that meeting?
Well, first of all, they didn't have enough staff as it was, and Amber was there working as hard as she could. I wanted to convey that we were in a situation that we could not afford to lose any more employees at this point. And I wanted to convey that it wasn't necessary to yell, and I wanted to explain everything that Amber was trying to take care of at that time, which might have been the reason why she missed having to let IT into the Zoom room.
Did Judge Flood take responsibility for her conduct during that meeting that afternoon?
Her response to me is, I got it. Okay, I got it. I got it. I got it. That's all she kept saying is, I got it.
Did you find anything during the times that you were in Bremerton Municipal Court that you recognized as macroaggressions or microaggressions?
I did not witness anything like that. What I witnessed are really hardworking employees that brought the concerns to me and to our presiding judge, Judge Walden.
And did you have some discussions with Judge Walden about it? I'm not asking you what Judge Walden said, but just did you have discussions with Judge Walden?
Yes.
What was the concern that the Tukwila clerks had about continuing to work in Bremerton?
Their concern was the conduct of the judge in the courtroom with her interactions with the attorneys.
And as a result of this, a decision was made that the Tukwila clerks would no longer provide assistance in Bremerton?
Correct.
Who made that decision?
Judge Walden.
Which court staff called you in tears?
Don Williams.
Anybody else besides Don Williams?
Oh, yeah. Serena Daigle, Cindy Hope, Heather Hunt. I don't know if Martita was crying. She was very upset when I talked to her. Ian Cohen several times. Stephen, I believe.
Is that Stephen DeRocher?
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if Jennifer Johnson was ever crying. She was definitely despondent several times near the end, as was Maury. To give an example, there was a defendant named Nicholas Braden. He had a warrant issued when he failed to appear for his arraignment after a summons went out. The warrant had been outstanding for months. We came to learn after the fact when we got noticed that he passed away from overdose, that he had been in and out of the county jail on other holds on a case out of district court, but no one was aware that he had a warrant that should have been in the system in Bremerton. And that was a case where had the warrant been active, we, given the defendant's history, would have asked for bail and likely would have asked for an in-custody evaluation to go directly to treatment. But because it was not in the system, he was released to the streets and he died 3 or 4 days after his release from a drug overdose. We've really changed our charging practices in a lot of ways. You know, for some context, an average year in Bremerton, our office would probably charge between 1,200, 1,300 cases. I think in 2023 it was less than 900. This year, the stats aren't only up through August, but I think it was like 590. And we've seen, that's not to say that, in my opinion, we're seeing a decrease in referrals. It's probably the contrary, especially with drugs now, drug possession now being a misdemeanor. But we're having to be far more selective in charging. We no longer have direct filing from law enforcement for criminal traffic infractions and things like that. We're just knowing that there are not enough public defenders and the court's capacity is what the current state it is. We are trying to be more selective.
And is the court's capacity something that you link to the turnover that the court has had over the last couple of years in staff?
Yes.
And is it also something that you link to the experience level of the current staff compared with in prior years where there's been more experienced staff?
Yeah, I think that's a big factor.
There was initial changes made where I was supposed to report just to her for everything, and I did that, and then it was changed to pre-trial release stuff went to her, and post-conviction went to the prosecutor, and it kept on flip-flopping periodically, and the judge was unhappy that I was following what Dawn and I's meeting notes had indicated.
And what was the purpose of the meeting with the judge?
To talk about the direction the probation department would be going under her lead. You're doing it wrong. She was very adamant that, I wasn't following her directions, and I was trying to do what I was told to do based on my notes, and I was surprised because I generally try to do what I'm told to do. I was told by Judge Flood that I am not a professional. I should not have an opinion, and has also stated that anything I say makes me a witness, and I can't be a witness. From approximately 10 days into her tenure, I think was the first staff meeting, there was a general get to know you. Every time I tried to say what I felt, what I believed, or what I'd been trained, I was immediately shut down. It was Mr. Cohen. It was it was any number of verbal cues with a inflection of disappointment or being upset. At that point, I had collapsed when one of my coworkers left. And I knew what it felt like.
You knew what it felt like to be on the receiving end of the treatment from Judge Flood?
Yes.
Is discourteous the word that you would use?
Demeaning, belittling, treating me as though I was a child, treating me as though I had no clue what I was doing after doing the job for 22 years, being the probation officer of the year twice in my career, 8 years apart. She would send me an email, and I remember the first incident that struck me is I got called in. Judge Flood was on the bench, closed the door behind me as I entered the courtroom. She was up on the bench with her mask on. She said I needed to work harder on my grammar and spelling. I needed to work on a particular JIS entry, and I needed to check my emails. And
just that you generally needed to check your emails? There was nothing pointed out specifically to you?
Nothing specifically. I told the hiring panel that I had struggled with dyslexia since I was a child. It was just part of who I am. And I try. I love spell check. It helps. Not perfect, but it helps. And I told the clerks after I got that email, and let everybody know that this is me. This is why my spelling sucks.
Did you bring your dyslexia, just to confirm, did you bring the issue of your dyslexia to Judge Flood's attention?
I did.
And did she moderate her treatment of you after you brought that to her attention?
Within days, it was called out again, which is great. Fine, I'll correct any errors I make. And I did, the ones I could find. But with dyslexia, you look at the computer and the word shift. I remember Judge Flood looking at Jennifer and saying something as I walked in the room. You're here. I'm not going to, you're my witness. I'm not yelling at him. And instantaneously, after the previous one was Cindy calling me in, my instinct was to run out of the court. I was shell-shocked.
Did the judge's treatment of you impact your physical health while you were still working with her?
Yes.
Just briefly, how did it impact your physical health?
I went from sleeping 8 hours a night to sleeping 4 at best. 4 if the doctor gave me Ambien, 3.5 if I didn't.
Had you taken Ambien previously?
Never taken it, and I only took it for like 3 nights because it was a half hour more sleep. What good's that going to do me? Depression, anxiety. I mean, everything you'd worked for 20 years.
You had depression previously?
Dog dying, grandmother dying for a week of feeling bummed out, but nothing like this. I mean, it was to the point where my wife would come out in the garage and I'm laying on the garage floor.
Did you ever tell Judge Flood that her treatment of you was having this kind of impact?
I told her that the stress was causing my A1C to go up, and I'd just been diagnosed with diabetes. I was hoping for some sympathy.
Did you get any?
No.
Did you at some point in 2023 decide that you were going to look for a new job?
Yeah.
Did you get a new job?
Yeah.
You were the first, you said you were the first or second probation officer in Bremerton's history?
That I'm aware of.
And you became the probation officer at Bremerton in September of 2000.
Correct.
And for the first 22 years, you were the probation officer under Judge Doctor.
Correct.
And you got used to Judge Doctor.
Yes.
You liked the way he ran his court.
It was efficient.
He would tell you what to do, and you would do it.
Yes.
During the 22 years that you worked under Judge Doctor, you helped develop and mold the probation program into what it became.
Correct.
And you won awards under Judge Doctor.
Correct.
2-time probation officer of the year.
Correct. But my personal opinion was there was a change in philosophy, and what was ordered on paper didn't get carried out. But there was nothing I could do. All I had to basically do is keep doing my job, rinse and repeat.
She stated that she would ask for my input when she wanted it.
And was this something that happened since you've been in the court administrator position?
Yes, just last week.
This was last week.
I had gone to lunch with my former boss, Jennifer Johnson. And when I didn't tell anybody that I was going to lunch, I just went. And when I came back, the judge was waiting for me in the clerk's office, and she looked like upset. And so I was nervous, but I walked back into my office and she followed, and she closed the door. And I sat down, and her first sentence was, "I heard that you went to lunch with Jennifer Johnson." And I stated, I was like, "Okay, so what's the problem?" And she stated that she said, "I didn't know you guys were friends." Jennifer and I didn't know each other prior to me coming to Bremerton Municipal Court, but I did work with her for 3 months and got very close with her, and she trained me and mentored me, and she was continuing to do so after she left. She had told me that it was that then she said that I was seen with Jennifer and that it was a perception. And she had also stated that Bremerton was a small town and everything gets back to me. And I was really upset because I still didn't know what the problem was. Like, I was like, "Are you trying to tell me that who I can and can't hang out with outside of work? We weren't on the property at all." She said, "No, it's just the perception."
And when she said everything gets back, did she mean everything gets back to her as judge?
Yes.
Could you explain that? What do you mean by her tone?
It's very matter of fact, and it's rude, it's unprofessional, it's mean. Like she's talking down to you, and like it's her way or no way. And it made me, like, with everything that had happened up until that point, since meeting with Jennifer Johnson for lunch, I I had been extremely stressed out and my anxiety was super high, and it pushed me into a panic attack. The judge yelled. I could hear her sitting on the phone. I was sitting right next to Jennifer, and she yelled, "That's not what I said. You need to listen." And I was completely, like, my heart was pounding. And Jennifer just sat there and started crying and just said, "Okay, Judge," and hung up the phone.
And obviously, audio doesn't capture the eye rolls, the smug look of condescension that I remember from that hearing. The judge would shake her head when I was talking and trying to what I felt like defend myself. So, these are the kind of things that aren't captured on audio, obviously, but that was my memory of this.
Or then, Judge Flood, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and correct?
I do. The reason I ran was because it was an open seat and I wanted to make change. My experience as a public defender, being a part of the community, living and working in the community, volunteering in the community, service before self.
You talk relatively slowly and carefully. Is that the way you talk in court?
Yes.
Okay. And then what about the tone you're using here? Is it similar to the way that you talk in court?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever treated any litigant, defendant, staff member, or any member of the public with discourtesy during your time as a judge?
I don't believe so.
And have you ever yelled at anybody, either from the bench or around the courthouse?
No.
Have you ever engaged in any kind of speech against anybody, public, staff, defendants, lawyers, that would be considered discriminatory based on someone's race or gender or sexual identity, immigration status, or anything else?
No.
Okay. Would you ever do that?
No.
Now, we've heard from Jennifer Johnson. Did you work with her?
Yes.
How did you get along with her at first?
Initially, it was a relief.
Did you ever treat Jennifer in an inappropriate, condescending, or rude manner?
Not in my opinion.
Not in your way?
Not in my opinion.
Okay.
That became you're questioning my abilities. You're questioning if I can do my job. You're making me feel like I can't do my job.
What are you saying? She's making you feel like you can't do your job, or
No,
she's saying
that's her response. That's their responses. It's disheartening that I'm being criticized for wanting to make sure that the orders read correctly. There's a lot of pushback to the care, the time, the patience that I have with defendants and participants.
okay.
That I should just rush through things. It is my opinion that the things that are being said by everyone is their personal impression of me because they didn't like me and they do not like me. Some people came in, I believe, with motivations other than to help, and that this sense of dog whistle language,
Okay.
racist language,
Like,
that to the average person, white person, doesn't mean anything, but as a Black woman means something totally different.
oh, go ahead. Have you ever heard that saying, you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem?
Yes, I've heard that saying before.
Does it apply in your case?
I believe so.
Or the phrase about the tail wagging the dog? Yeah, are you getting cooperation from these folks that work for the court?
It's my impression that there is this surface of I'm doing my job, but not really doing my job, because if I really do my job, she could be successful. Was I mean when I gave you an alternative schedule when you had only been employed there for 2 weeks? Was I mean when you spent all day on the phone with Social Security when you needed to be off of court? When you tell me you need to leave early because you got a family emergency? When you need to come in late? When you need to take leave without pay? Was I mean when you said you want to do 8 A, B, and C, and I said, okay. I was mean when I said, no, send that to me in an email. And to say that I made some type of eking sound, am I being called, and that's racist in tone, am I being called a monkey by your implication that I said I'm making some sound or I'm looking some way on my bench?
Thank you. That's all I have.
You have admitted that you verbally admonished your staff for not following instructions. Is that right?
I have admitted to what's in the stipulation.
Does the stipulation include verbally admonishing your staff for not following instructions?
I believe that it contains some language to that effect from my memory.
Let's take a look at it. Judge Flood, do you see the document that's being shared?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to scroll up to the top. Do you read that it says stipulation to facts and code violations? Did I read that correctly? Did you also verbally admonish your staff for making mistakes?
I believe the document speaks for itself, ma'am.
So you agreed in this document that you verbally admonished your staff for making mistakes?
I believe the document reads, at times responded verbally admonished staff for not following her instructions for making mistakes.
Thank you. You also agreed that you communicated with them in a manner that was pointed and harsh. Correct?
It says, though responded really raised her voice, her communication could be pointed and harsh.
So you agreed that you did communicate with your staff in a way that was pointed and harsh.
Objection. The document speaks for itself. Asked to answer. Argumentative.
Overruled.
I'd ask the court to direct the witness to answer.
Could you repeat your question?
You admitted that you did communicate with your staff in a manner that was pointed and harsh, correct?
I agreed that it could be.
You agreed that you could be condescending to your staff, correct?
It says, when that happened, when that did happen, responded could be condescending, which made some staff feel humiliated, embarrassed, and anxious.
So by signing this stipulation, you admitted that you could be condescending to your staff.
Objection is asked and answered. Argumentative.
Overruled.
The stipulation states that.
But you don't believe that's really true.
The stipulation is what I agreed to.
I'm asking you a different question. Do you believe that's really true?
I'm not understanding your question.
What part of it don't you understand?
What are you asking? Maybe you should restate the question.
All right. You said you agreed when that did not happen, respondent could be condescending, correct?
I'm not understanding if you're asking me if I said something or if the document said something.
Okay. Do you agree that the document says when that did not happen, respondent could be condescending?
Yes, I agree. The document says that. Yes, we have that in front of us. Yes. Okay. I believe that that is the opinion of some staff, and as a way to accept responsibility, this is what is in the stipulation.
Do you agree that the stipulation said you made some staff members feel humiliated, embarrassed, and anxious?
The stipulation says that.
Do you agree that you did make some staff members feel humiliated, embarrassed, and anxious?
That's what I have been told, and that's what I have heard.
Do you agree that the stipulation says some staff believed that you did not clearly communicate your expectations of them?
Yes, that is what the stipulation says.
The stipulation says that you chastised them if they didn't understand what you wanted. Do you agree that's what the stipulation says?
Yes, that is what the stipulation says.
Is it true that you chastised staff when they didn't understand what you wanted?
That is what was described to me.
Is it true?
Under the definition and what was described to me and how people felt, sometimes.
Do you agree that you were at times constantly critical of Ms. Williams?
That's what the stipulation says, because I don't remember everything that is in that stipulation.
I'm not asking you about the stipulation, Judge Flood. I'm asking you if you agree that you were at times constantly critical of Ms. Williams.
At times, I feel and have been informed and am accepting responsibility that Dawn felt that I was critical of her.
You saw the former probation officer, Ian Cohen, testify earlier this week. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember seeing Mr. Cohen break into tears a couple of times while he was testifying?
I saw him wiping his face.
Did you just sort of smiled a little bit? Why did you smile when I asked you about Mr. Cohen breaking into tears?
Because your description is breaking into tears. I saw him wiping his face. So that's a difference of your opinion.
Were you critical of Mr. Cohen?
In the sense of bringing things to his attention that needed to be corrected, that is termed as critical, yes.
And did he have difficulty meeting your expectations?
From my understanding, yes.
You heard Latricia Kinlow's testimony that Amber cried after you shouted at her, right?
I heard the testimony, yes.
Did it surprise you to hear Ms. Kinlow testify that Amber cried?
Yes.
And you heard Ms. Kinlow's testimony that she had never heard a judge speak to an employee like that. Did you hear that?
Yes.
And did that surprise you when Ms. Kinlow testified that?
Yes.
You admitted that you were impatient and discourteous to Mr. Knowles. Is that right?
I believe there is a paragraph in the stipulation that Mr. Knowles is discussed.
But you don't remember admitting to being impatient and discourteous to him?
I don't remember the exact language that is in that paragraph, but I did stipulate to the language that is in that paragraph.
Part of that stipulation is that you talked to Mr. Knowles in an impatient and discourteous manner. Is that correct?
That is included in that paragraph, yes.
You heard Jennifer Johnson testify about this incident in her office with Mr. Knowles. Is that right?
I don't remember that testimony.
You saw Ms. Johnson cry when she testified about this incident. Do you recall that?
No, I don't recall the testimony about this incident, so I can't recall her crying about it. There was a lot of testimony. I do recall Ms. Johnson wiping her face and holding her head down and asking for a moment, but I do not remember what part of the testimony that was.
In 2021, while you were the president of the board of directors of Kitsap Community Resources, their leadership team accused you of creating a hostile work environment for staff. Is that right? Were you president of the board of directors of Kitsap Community Resources in 2021?
Yes, it was.
Is it your testimony that the leadership team of Kitsap Community Resources did not write to the board of directors accusing you of a hostile work environment for staff?
My testimony is that I do not believe your statement is true, as to what you're saying there. I believe that there was information sent to the board through another source.
And in this letter, Irmgard Davis and the other signatories are accusing you as board president of creating a hostile work environment for staff, bullying and intimidation tactics. Is that what the letter says?
I object. It's hearsay. It shouldn't be shown.
This is impeachment.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, still speaking. This, going through and reading from it when it's not an admitted exhibit is my first objection. Second, is it's not proper impeachment in this case. Third, it's beyond the scope of direct examination.
This is, in my view, a fair impeachment. Secondly, it is impeachment. And so narrowly, Ms. Rasnick, and this goes to you, you're only going to reference statements that are impeaching. And this one that you have read is impeaching. Beyond that, I don't want you to go further than that.
the signatories of the letter are accusing you of creating a hostile work environment for staff through bullying and intimidation tactics. It goes on to list such as cutting off staff mid-sentence during presentations and discussions, discussing personal opinions of a management member with other staff members, lack of communication regarding meetings, in-person visits and information directly affecting staff members, singling out staff members for unprofessional and degrading discussion, setting expectations for staff members not consistent with her position, e.g. expecting a staff member to respond to a demand or request from her, thus violating bylaws. That's all I have on cross, Your Honor. We have seen that this proceeding started by the judge stipulating to some violations of the Code of Judicial Conduct. It is notable that virtually every witness called by the commission has testified about Judge Flood's inappropriate treatment of staff and attorneys, its frequency and consistency, and the impact of that behavior on Bremerton Municipal Court. I don't think it's in dispute that all of the staff who were at Bremerton Municipal Court when Judge Flood took the bench in January 2022 have resigned. After that initial wave, the first group of staff hired by Judge Flood have also subsequently resigned. And many of the second wave of staff hired by Judge Flood have also resigned. And resignations continue. Judge Flood is on her third court administrator in the last 2 years. The Judge Flood is on at least her third probation officer, and there was a person named Alexis Oler in the position who also resigned, and now there's someone new. A lot of turnover in a position that has a really key function. Judge Flood is on her second therapeutic courts coordinator. She's very proud of the work she has done on therapeutic courts. The first person who she hired as therapeutic courts coordinator to set up the program and sort of design the system, he resigned, but the judge also testified that she is the person at the top. She's the person with whom the buck stops, according to GR 29 and her own conceptualization of the hierarchy within the office. You cannot be at the top and not accept the responsibilities of being at the top. This panel heard testimony about the impact on court functioning of the staff turnover and of the judge's lack of understanding and appreciation in many instances of the ways the court is supposed to function. Despite the stipulation, we heard today the judge continuing to persist in refusing to take any real responsibility. The panel heard her during her testimony this afternoon repeatedly distinguish between what she had stipulated to and what was true. If she continues to blame them, she continues to accuse them of being allied against her. She blames the city council. She blames racism in the Bremerton community and among the staff members herself. The testimony of the CJC witnesses about the functioning of the court, the turnover, the judge's demeanor towards staff, the effect of the judge's demeanor on staff is unrebutted. There was no one who came forth on the judge's behalf to testify, no. What those former employees testified about that led them to leave this court, their reactions, the fact that they cried at work, the fact that Serena Daigle thought about harming herself. Nobody came forth on the judge's behalf to testify. No, that didn't happen.
The panel did not rely on this document as substantive evidence regarding respondents' conduct at the community organization, but did rely on it to assess respondents' credibility when denying outright that she had ever treated court staff and the attorneys in a degrading or belittling fashion. The hearing panel found the respondent's demeanor while listening to other witnesses' testimony and her own demeanor significant in its assessment in this case.
particularly her lack of apparent reaction or smiling when witnesses cried or came close to tears when testifying about her treatment of them. When asked by disciplinary counsel, question, do you remember seeing Mr. Cohen break into tears a couple of times while he was testifying? Answer, I saw him wiping his face. Question, you sort of smiled a little bit. Why did you smile when I asked you about Mr. Cohen breaking into tears? Answer, because your description is breaking into tears. I saw him wiping his face. So there's a difference of your opinion is that he broke into tears. My opinion is that I saw him wiping his face. I wasn't watching his every move.
Latricia Kinlow and Jennifer Johnson, highly experienced and competent Black women court administrators, first engaged with the respondent in her court as part of Courts Helping Courts, ready to identify and address her contention that the court's problems stemmed from racism. But that is not what they found. Institutional racism does not cause a judge to belittle, demean, and drive away 2 full sets of court staff, notwithstanding the assistance of multiple highly qualified volunteers and multiple types of training and coaching.
The panel struggled to imagine what alternative or additional steps it would take for this respondent to be a successful judicial officer. None of the panel members were persuaded that respondent truly understands the magnitude and impact of her misconduct, or even that she believes she has engaged in any misconduct at all, given her testimony. There was no persuasive evidence that she felt any remorse for her treatment of others. Therefore, there is no basis to believe that respondent has the capacity or motivation to change. The possibility of returning a judge to the bench who will likely continue in conduct that harms court staff, the operation of the court, attorneys, the city, and the public is not an acceptable outcome. And if past conduct is a predictor of future behavior, any further commission proceedings to address further misconduct would be protracted and exact an unfairly heavy toll on all involved, if indeed witnesses could be persuaded to come forward.
Based on the foregoing decision, the Commission finds that Judge Flood violated Canon 1, Rules 1.1 and 1.2, and Canon 2, Rules 2.5a and 2.5b of the Code of Judicial Conduct, and for the reasons stated above, is hereby censured with a recommendation that the state Supreme Court remove her from office. Under Article 4, Section 31, Paragraph 8 of the state constitution, this sanction operates to suspend respondent from office immediately with salary from her judicial position until a final determination is made by the Supreme Court. Dated this 10th day of January, 2025, unanimously signed by all 9 members of the panel.
If you got this far, thank you. As a result of this finding, in January 2025, Judge Tracy Flood was immediately suspended from the bench with pay. In December 2025, the Washington State Supreme Court ruled permanent removal was too harsh and rejected the CJC's finding in favor of a 30-day suspension without pay to begin immediately. This matter prompted Flood not to seek re-election in 2025. Her term ended December 31st. Judge Tracy Flood is canceled. There's no place on the bench for judges like Flood, and this weenie, Nathan Milliron.
You get out of my courtroom.
I can't wait until Milliron is in front of a judicial disciplinary commission. Watch it here when it happens.